What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is iRate Reviews, the review show where I go over a comic book, its story, its art, give you my impressions, and let you know whether it's something you should go back to the comic book shop for or not. What I want to talk about is Venom Number One. So Venom Number One is a new Marvel Now 2.0 title, and this is taking the Venom symbiote that was really the star of the Venom Space Knight, as well as, Flash Thompson, and it is putting it into its own book. So let's take a look at the story. Where we open up, the Venom symbiote has no longer got a host, so it's finding its way through the city and ultimately stumbles upon a homeless man that uses it as kind of a source of energy at that point in time. But that's really where we leave the Venom symbiote behind for the foreseeable part of the future. This is going to be a story about Lee Price. So Lee Price is a character that is a former Army Ranger. We get introduced to Mac Gargan, who, as you know, is the Scorpion. We get introduced to Lee and then Mac Gargan, and Lee is really a person that needs work. He needs a job. He's probably gotten kicked out of his house or his apartment, needs his money, and he's willing to do pretty much anything. He's got that sense of moral flexibility. That's just the way that they're personifying the character. So we find that he's in a little bit less reputable kind of business at this point in time. He gets invited along to a particular job, and this is one of those interesting things where people see the escalation of what kind of crime is going on. It used to be situations where it's just like, oh yeah, man, you go get somebody a CD full of credit card numbers, but nowadays it's just gas that'll turn people into monsters. And there's actually a commentary on how those things have escalated inside comic books and the whole events situation around that. But what we see is that, Tombstone is kind of making an appearance through name only as his goons come to pick up the goods and just promise to leave the guys alive instead of paying them. At that point in time, the new Venom, being hosted by this homeless man, crashes through the walls and finds himself face to face with what's going to be a really good new host. So he ditches the homeless guy, attaches himself to Lee, and finally, gets that big, burly kind of visage that we were expecting from Venom. He permeates through the mind. He's like, oh, this guy's been around violence, but he's a soldier. And the last guy that I was at, he was a soldier too, and he was one of the most decent people that I've met. And then all of a sudden he gets the impression that, no, Venom is not in charge. The symbiote is not in charge. The symbiote does not get a say. Lee Price gets the say. He makes the rules. And he just goes ballistic on these guys, killing them all, leaving no witnesses, whether it's the homeless guy that's not going to tell anybody, his best friend that he's known since he was kids, and then we get a little bit more backstory, abused at home, he was, he basically was looking for an opportunity, and now that he has it, he's just basically seized this luck that has come his way, and is now at home trying to figure out how he's going to make it work to his advantage. And that's the kind of person that's in control of Venom. And we see the last page is really a good indication of how that control is going to work, as you see Venom almost trying to crawl away from this person because he's not what he wants to be. He's not who Venom wants to be. So that's going to be a really cool storyline. The art itself is a very good art style. I feel like the kind of fluid aspect of Venom is a little bit more downplayed, but I'm totally fine with that. Because this more current style is definitely a little bit more edgy, and it deals with that kind of hard-edge personality that Lee Price has. The revisions to the costume is very simple, but it's still very cool. And the art is just, it helps complement everything so well. The writing itself, I like the way that the story's playing out, and it gives me a lot of different ideas for potential story arcs where this is going to go, which is the really important thing. A story needs to give you direction, and this is going to give me a direction that's going into a not necessarily forward progression for Venom. Venom is going to be a much more lethal, much more cold and calculating kind of person, at least on the outside. But the interesting thing is going to be the struggle between the symbiote that's new and reformed, especially after being with such an inherently good person like Flash Thompson, versus Lee Price, who has a lot of moral ambiguity. That's going to be the real focal point of this story going forward, and I can't wait to see more about that. I definitely recommend that you go pick up Venom. Just give it a shot for issue number 1, and if you're a Spider-Man fan, this is definitely going to bring you back into that old flavor of Venom that you really appreciate. So that's my review of Venom Number One, but I want to know what you guys thought, so hit me up in the comments down below so that we can start that conversation. As always, if you like what you see, hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.